Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Governed. Our topic today is going to be why politicians and bureaucrats love lockdowns. All right, we're back to Washington State, and I first must start out this video with the inevitable trigger warning. This content that you're going to be seeing today has not been approved by the Ministry of COVID Compliance. So this is your fair warning. If you are triggered by information that has not been approved by the Ministry of COVID Compliance, I would suggest that you stop right now. Don't you dare watch another minute. The main topic today is going to be about why do Washington State politicians and bureaucrats love lockdowns? And apparently a lot of politicians and bureaucrats all over the country love them, not just Washington State, but since I live in Washington State, let's talk about the specific examples here. Now, for anybody that's been paying attention to this, Governor Inslee, who recently did win his re-election, decided, of course, after the election, that he was going to lock the state down again, using the excuse of the fact that many people are catching COVID. Of course, he's ignoring the fact that both the death rates and the hospital rates are going down, but that doesn't matter. Lockdowns are fun. Inslee loves it, and it's going to hurt us a lot more than it hurts him. And that he was able to do all of this before he got on his airplane to go to Hawaii for his extended vacation. Now, that's great for Governor Jay Inslee, not so great for those of us who are left behind. So, why do they like these lockdowns so much? Well, number one, politicians like Jay Inslee and others, they love it because it makes them feel very important. They get to be the center of attention. One of the challenges that people don't realize, even though you're elected governor and you're an elected official, is that people oftentimes don't really pay a lot of attention to what you have to say. And mostly that's because the average person out there doesn't care about the politicians or the political class or the concerns that they have. They're just trying to live their lives. They got activities that they want to have with their families. They will have after-school activities. They'd rather go out with their friends and talk to them. They're not going to want to focus on what the politicians are doing in a room down in Olympia. And that's particularly true for the governor as well. So it's sometimes hard for an elected official to be able to break through all that noise and make people pay attention to them. And if there's one thing politicians want, it's more attention. So that's frustrating. So the nice thing is, just like to a hammer, everything's a nail, to the politician, everything is always a law. The answer is always a law. More laws, more rules, more regulations. That is how politicians view the solution to every problem that's around them. And when you're a governor, you have to deal with a bunch of other elected officials in order to get any of the laws that you want passed. Washington State, like many other states, has both a Senate and a legislature. And there's 98 legislators in the Washington State legislature. There's 49 state senators. And Inslee needs to get a majority of each of them to agree with any policies and bills and legislation that he wants to get passed. And that's kind of a messy, difficult process that's part of the checks and balances that we have in local government as well as at the national level. And at local government, this is kind of, it's hard for Inslee to get the legislators to listen to him. He'll give proposals, and even though the Democrats currently control both houses, that's no guarantee that they're actually going to listen to him and pass the regulations or the rules that he wants. And this is frustrating. If you're the governor and you believe that you deserve all the attention and that you know exactly what you're doing and what's going to be best for Washington State, to get a bunch of these other elected officials who have their own opinions to agree with you, that's sometimes a difficult task. So the beauty of being in an emergency lockdown is that you get to be king. And if there's one position that a politician always believes is going to be the best position to be in, it's a king, because when you're the king, you get to mandate every single time under the emergency rules, which are fairly ridiculous the way they've been created in this state. You have all kinds of mandates you get to throw on people. Everything's an emergency. You can instill panic and convince everybody that you're the solution to the problem. You can spread fear porn, that the end is nigh. You can reward your political allies with favors and exemptions from the ridiculous rules you impose on those whom you don't like. And of course, none of these rules are going to hurt you. If you're Governor Inslee, you don't really care that a bunch of businesses are going to lose their business forever, that a bunch of people are going to lose their jobs. After all, that just makes them wards of the state. And if they manage to survive, it reduces how much resources they might have to oppose you politically in the future. For your political allies, you can let them violate all your rules with just impunity, and they can go ahead and riot and destroy Seattle, burn down buildings and cars and attack people and oftentimes attack your political enemies. And that division really doesn't hurt you. If you're Governor Inslee, it's kind of fun. You can sit back and watch the fight, and instead you get to appear to be the benevolent king issuing all kinds of rules and regulations. And if you're Governor Inslee and you live in Washington State, the majority of your power base, judging from the votes that we recently had, all come from the city of Seattle. And so it's really fairly easy just to focus your support on there and the Capital District down in Olympia, and you can be pretty sure that you're going to get away with almost anything you want, provided they're happy with you. And that includes getting an over 20% pay raise, which he recently did. Basically, there's no pay cuts for the governor, so he can basically have other people lose their money, but he doesn't lose his. He gets to reward friends. He gets to punish those rural rubes who didn't vote for him this last time anyway. What does he care if they're going to be suffering? They aren't his supporters. And he can demand higher taxes, always a nice objective if you're Governor Inslee. And he gets to make up these rules and change them every week at random times, create the phases, of course, that are meaningless. It only means something to him. It doesn't seem to mean anything if you're in those counties with the different phases you're supposed to be getting into, and everyone jumps to his daily diktats. This is great if you're Governor Inslee. And of course, the ridiculous rules that he recently imposed on how many people that he would allow in your house for Thanksgiving, as though the governor has any right to tell you that. They're so ridiculous and absurd, they inspire civil disobedience, and nobody's going to follow them. So the question is, how is he going to enforce it? Is Governor Inslee going to be peeking through your window, spying on your family to figure out, is that person related to you, or do you have too many people sitting around the table? And of course, that's absurd. Inslee's in Hawaii. He's probably taking a vacation somewhere else. So he has outsourced this enforcement to your neighbors. That nosy neighbor down the street, the guy that doesn't like you, the person who put the Biden sign up in their front yard, those are the people who are going to turn you in, because that's what he's created, is a snitch list and a COVID compliance army to come and help him enforce his randomly changing, always abusive regulation that he passes on a consistent basis. And if you're not down with the Ministry of COVID Compliance, if you are not approved, if you're not saying something that they approve, if you're not doing what they approve, then he can get you in trouble. And that makes Inslee happy. Bureaucrats are like that. But what about the media? Well, the tame media are going to always seem to comply with the government, such as whatever's left, because the truth is the media is dying. There's a lot less media than there is today, and they clearly have made themselves subservient to King Inslee, especially with these Zoom media conferences where he doesn't allow questions. And when even somebody like Brandy Cruz, who's asked him occasionally a question that's just moderately challenging, and Inslee explodes at her like it's the end of the world, nobody dare question what he does. So the media is really not going to be asking him the tough questions or holding him accountable. So this also helps, one of the reasons why the bureaucrats and the politicians love these types of lockdowns and emergencies and the chaos that sort of ensues in the population, is that it does reduce oversight and transparency. If there's one thing government and bureaucrats, they just cannot stand, it's transparency and openness. They want to make you think that they're that way, but if you ever try to look at what's going on in these agencies, because of the inevitable incompetence and problems and skeletons in the closet you're going to discover, they certainly don't want you to really look that closely. And that's part of the problem. This is one of the reasons why they like this emergency declaration and this emergency scenario, is that you're not going to be able to see what's going on in government. And now they're able to allow a lot of these local governments to have Zoom meetings, make it very difficult for the public to make comments, to show up, to find out what's going on. Sometimes the technology doesn't even work. And serious and very important decisions are going to be made by these elected bodies, by these local governments, by these bureaucrats, and the limited oversight that existed there before, the limited transparency that was there before, it all goes away in this kind of a scenario. And of course, all these chaotic events that Inslee is imposing on the rest of the state are creating a huge hole in the state budget. And he knows this full well. But he's not going to do an emergency session and have the legislature come in and possibly modify the budget. Instead, he's going to rack up the biggest deficit he can so that he can justify higher taxes. And higher taxes have always been on Inslee's objective plate. That's a goal that he really has had, specifically an income tax, which has been something that Inslee has pushed for a long time, despite the fact that he was elected in 2012 saying that Washington State didn't need any new taxes of any kind. He's helped raise taxes over 33 times, and an income tax would be the cherry on top. This is in addition to this carbon tax, which is something that he has always pushed as a climate change governor, somebody who's incredibly paranoid and worried about changing climate, and he believes that you should pay for it with a carbon tax. And the pay per mile, which has been something he's also spoken about very positively, because unfortunately cars are a lot more fuel efficient today. That's not great for tax revenue for the state, so he wants to find a new way to collect money. And of course, there was his effort to basically take away car tabs. There was a $30 car tab initiative that that the citizens have voted for 3 times now, and government has always found a way to work around it and jack those car tabs up as high as they can get. And when citizens again in 2019 passed this initiative, Inslee did everything he could to try to defeat the initiative. And then when citizens voted for it anyway, of course, he helped with his appointments in the Supreme Court to make sure that it was overturned. Anything he can tax, the budget there's no real limit to the budget. And the belief with the bureaucrats and the politicians, including Inslee, is that there's an unlimited pile of money out there and that he can get it, and anything he spends it on is more important than what you would spend it on. So this is why Inslee and the bureaucrats and politicians love the lockdown. They like what's happening. This is what they live for. This is an opportunity they can't believe that they have, and the rest of us suffer accordingly. Now, if you like what you see here, you want to learn more, please go to wethegovern.com. You'll read about articles related to this and other subjects. Don't forget to go to my YouTube channel, which you're already on right now, but don't forget to subscribe and like and share it with others. That's the best way to get the word out, and it really helps us grow our audience. I really appreciate the fact that you're here. And remember, the future does belong to those who show up.